You need to find glory in your suffering. What I mean by finding glory in your suffering is that suffering is a natural occurrence in life. And I don't mean getting tortured is suffering, but rather struggling through things like academics to relationships. These things can get hard, they push you down, and they'll stress you out. But this is natural. You need it to grow and become a better person. All growth is uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. But if something is unfamiliar, it's an opportunity to grow. It's normal to take comfort in familiarity. It's natural, of course. But when you stay there, nothing ever changes and you'll never grow to your expectations. You'll never achieve what you want. Nobody is born a star athlete or a rich businessman. They get there by working and by growing, not just by sheer talent. They invest in themselves, they deal with being uncomfortable, and by putting in the hard work and sacrificing things they enjoy. The star athlete had to push through exhaustion, pain, and the desire to spend time doing things other than training. The rich businessman had to pull late hours, make calls with investors, partners, customers. None of these things are fun, enjoyable things, but it had to be done to bring them to where they are today. If being accomplished didn't take hard work, pain, and suffering, everybody would be accomplished. But that's what sets the accomplished apart. When they could have stopped, they kept going. Sometimes I look around and I see so many people who do things as easily as possible. They'll go with the flow, or they don't want to push past some fear they have, or they refuse to try something new, or just ask that new question. Now try to imagine yourself going through life with a bag, and as you get older, you start filling up this bag with things you learn or things you've done. Maybe you learned to weld, maybe you climbed a mountain, or you bit the bullet and took a trip. These are things you'd carry with you for your whole life. But if you go the easy way, you'll find yourself after a few years with an empty bag. You didn't shoot your shot, you didn't take that extra class, and you end up with nothing to show for yourself. There's a saying that goes, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And do you want to just be everyone, or do you want to be different? And if you want to be different, then you have to suffer and you have to do hard things. And I don't mean that you need to go and try to climb Mount Everest, but just go and try new things and get used to being uncomfortable in new situations, because it will get easier and easier. However, on your path of growing into somebody, you need to remember that all your work does mean something, and it's there to teach you something. Every mistake, every success, every decision you make is based on every experience you've ever had in your life. It's important to look inwards and see how your decision making changes as time goes on. However, you should try to make decisions that you know you'll be able to benefit the most from, and not just go through something difficult for the sake of it being difficult. You need to be able to take something away from it. A while back, a friend came up to me and he put two classes in front of me and asked which one he should take. Both met graduation criteria, the only difference being one is a much harder class, and naturally, I recommended the easier class because it still fulfilled his graduation requirement, and there's no point in taking in all that extra work. Naturally, my buddy took the harder class with the logic that nothing easy is ever worth doing. At the end of the semester, he comes to me and saying, "Man, I wished I took the easier class because I had to put so much work into this class, but my grades aren't reflecting it. And I couldn't just focus on actually learning the content because I was so stressed out. And honestly, I could have gained so much more from the easier class because I would have been able to focus on the content way more." So was that suffering from the harder class worth it? Maybe. There's things he would have learned in the harder course that wouldn't have been covered in the easier class, and pushing himself in his studies. But the point from this is that you should try to distinguish between self-inflicted suffering like my friend, or meaningful growth-inducing suffering to reach a goal, develop a skill, or connect with someone new. That's not to say you can't gain these things from self-induced suffering. However, it's probably a little bit more unlikely. My friend took the harder class on the principle that nothing easy is ever worth doing, but he quickly learned that just because the class was a little easier doesn't mean there's less to take away from it. He could have had more time to focus on depth of these lessons or starting new projects, but instead he got trapped. However, there is nuance to everything. Just like one man's junk is another's treasure, someone else's battle may mean nothing to you. Pick your battles wisely. You'll learn so much more being deliberate and not just rushing into things without a second thought.